Okay, to give you some ideas on how to do this design, the first thing is to make sure you establish your feature lines first. And as far as your feature lines, I always recommend doing the feature lines of just the pavement. Do not do the top or curb. And I think that's probably one of the biggest things that I've seen the students is that they have the pavement elevations here. Remember, that's just pavement or gutter, and then they start doing the topper curve right away, and and like, no, pues it's not working, mister. Pues es que the thing is that you really do need to make sure that these feature lines work first. Do not continue until all of these feature lines along the pavement, and notice that's all over the place. Here I have only the pavement or the gutter. I'm going to make a reference of that several times. Even the islands, I'm not going to put them in for now because those are actually pretty easy. But for now, once again, just gutter and throughout. No buildings, no sidewalks, no nothing. These are all my only feature lines. And if you want me to isolate, I can do that. Just to show you that those are only the feature lines that I'm going to start working with. All your design is based off of this. You should not have any top or curb. You should not have any buildings to begin with. Okay. So let's go ahead and start now. From the beginning, I think I already have a video to show you that you should have set a 2% grade from this one coming up, 2% and 2%. And then you have a feature line coming across, and that one, it doesn't have to be flat. It has a 1.28, so that's fine. Yours doesn't have to be the same, but I did want these to come up from this elevation coming up about 2%, and from this elevation coming up 2%. Okay. Now, a couple of things that we have to consider. We want the whole site to drain in this direction. So we kind of need to keep everything over here a little bit higher and everything over here a little bit lower. And everything has to have that tendency. So if I'm checking elevations here, and this one has some elevation, I think I'm going to have to adjust them, but nonetheless, so look at my grades here. They're coming down at a -1. The front of the building has to be a 0. That's not negotiable. It has to be. But if you notice, these grades here are coming down at a -1. This is coming down -5. This is coming down negative 9.3, 0.93. We want that. Okay, so you should not have anything coming down in this direction in a positive grade. All those really have to be negatives. Okay, so we need to make sure we understand that once I'm done, everything has to be in a negative fashion, just like this side, -2.78, -1.35. Everything is coming down this way. So just keep that in mind, and that's what we want to do. So coming off the driveway from here, I need to make sure I'm coming down at -5. That one's already set. And I'm not sure why this one has an extra little elevation point. It doesn't really matter. But I'm coming down at -5, coming down -5. Same thing on this side. Coming down -5, coming down -5. Okay. There are going to be some adjustments on this side, but over here, this is pretty much done, I think, at this point where it's coming. And even from this one coming down -5 to this point here, and then that little grade from here now, as if you notice, is going to start coming up. And that makes sense because I'm going to have this part draining down this way and then draining down to a point, an elevation of 3576. And then it's going to start coming up. And that's really what I want. Remember, this part needs to be a little bit higher. So I'm going to come up, but I'm going to come up a minimal grade because, even in coming down at a 5% grade at this point, I'm already at an elevation of 35. My existing grade is 31. So here, just by comparing my 31 contour, I'm already filling 4 feet. So because of that, I want to just try to lower it as much as I can by going down the maximum 5% and then coming up the minimal amount of zero point 0.6. Even though I did say 0.5, 0.5 in real life is actually a very hard grade to work with, to build. So I usually go 0.6, okay? 0.6. Now, here what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep going with the 0.6 all the way across this way. Um, Not on purpose. I'm not sure what I did. How long ago? Okay. All right. I'll edit that out. So I want to come up at a 0.6%. And then I'm going to go zero point 0.6 all the way to this corner, just once again to kind of keep this flat. So I'm going to go 0.6 across here. And the other thing too, notice these feature lines. I kind of drew these feature lines. When you draw these additional feature lines, they're going to be frozen at the end of the day. So don't erase them. Just leave them there. You will need them for design. just like this feature line here, and then some across here. Okay, you always want to do that, and you're going to do the islands on your own, so you would do want to add those feature lines um, on your own. But again, coming up to the island, you do need them. You will need them. Okay, so looking at this one, point 0.6 coming up. So I came up 0.6 and then come up 0.6. So from here, I'm going to come up once again, a minimum of 0.6. So I came up 0.6 all the way to this corner. I need to come across flat at a 0 grade all the way across. And then this one just ended up being on its own, negative 2.5, and this one like a negative 1.92. So that works. That's exactly what I need to do. I need this thing to drain out this way. How about this corner? From here, I can't really establish this one yet. The more critical part is this part. I need this part to drain out. So remember again, I was coming up at a 0.6. It's kind of like this is like a little high point. And then from here, I'm going to keep going up another 0.6 and another zero point 0.6, all the way up to a point here, and then come across flat. And in the spirit of trying to lower, we're trying to lower this thing, I maximize this part to a -5 and a -5. So I came up 0.6 on this side, flat across, and then I went the max 5%. That ended up just generous, speaking of grades, I guess, 1%. This one, once again, I went from this point to this point, the maximum, and trying to get as low as possible, 5%. And let's kind of pause here a little bit. This is 39.35 right now. There's not much else I can do. I went the minus 0.5, I went up 0.6, came down, the 1% with this whole thing. And right now I'm at 39.35. The existing contour is 29. So, we're already having a lot of fill, and that's what's happening, and that's what it's going to be. There's nothing we can do just because we're restricted to this 5% grade. If we can go higher, then we can actually lower. If we can go with a higher grade, like a -8, -9%, which I have done in real life, you can lower these grades a lot more. But in this case, they're telling us 5%, and that's what we're stuck with. That's all we can do. So here, -5. Once again, coming up the minimal 0.6, coming up 0.6 to an elevation, flat, -5, -5. This part ended up just working itself out at a negative 0.937. Okay. Another little grade here, -0.5 to a point here. It's almost like there's a little low point because that's -5, and then we're going to come up 0.6. So it's almost like that's a little low point. So by the way, that is a very critical spot elevation you're going to need on your final grading plan. You're going to need a spot elevation here, 3340. You're going to need a spot elevation here at the corners, but then you have to put this one in here to tell them, look, I want an elevation at this point on the curb that's going to be lower, because this is 3302. This one's going to end up being 32.98. If you forgot this one, Mr. I forgot, then they're not going to build it. They're going to go directly from 3302 up to 3340. They will never consider that low point. You have to add that spot elevation yourself. Okay. And then this part, same thing, come up 0.6, come across flat, and then, -5 and all that stuff. Okay. So that's really what you need to do along this edge. And I'm going to continue with some other areas, but that's really what you need to do here. I'll talk about sidewalks and buildings in the next video. Let's look at this side, -5, -5, and again, I'm not sure why there's that extra elevation point there. -5. This one started coming up. I'm not sure I would have done that. And now that I think about it, I probably wouldn't have drawn the feature line across this way. It's almost like I would have done like a little low point from here, and then from here come across. So I'm going to adjust this one. I'm going to grab this one and adjust it. I'm not sure why it keeps muting itself. I guess it's on a time frame or something. Sorry. Go across here. Okay, so let me look at those elevations again. -5, -5. I would, in the spirit of lowering this thing, go still -5. But I'll work with this one a little bit later, because that one is too steep. Then I'm going to come up 0.6. I'm trying to keep this low once again. come up 0.6. And notice what I'm doing too is to adjust this grade over here. I'm clicking and adjusting on this side 0.6. A lot of the students have been doing the wrong thing. They go, oh yeah, mister, it should be 0.6, so I'm going to go ahead and change this to 0.6. But notice what I did. I made it 0.6 this way, but then it adjusted this grade. Oh, this should be 0.62, mister. And look where I'm clicking. I'm clicking on the wrong side, and I'm doing it wrong on purpose because that has been happening a lot. And then look at this nightmare. Oh, it's your computer. No, no, no. You need to make sure you understand on what side do we click that feature line. I need this to be -5, and then I need this to be coming up 0.6. That way, because I get that comment a lot too. And then yeah, that's side 0.62. Like, pues I'm trying to fix this, mister, but everything else messes up. Well, because you're clicking on the wrong side of the feature line. If I need to adjust this way, like this one right now, see, it has a 1.24. I might change it here and say, well, that should be 0. But what's going to happen with this line? It gets changed again. So just be careful. Be careful. 0.6 this way, click 0.6 here. I need this to be 0, but since I'm going to leave this one alone, I'm going to click on this side of the feature line, 0. And then and this is actually a good point here on this elevation, because technically this is the only part that needs to be 0. There's no sidewalk here, so I can actually go here, -5. From this elevation to this point, -5. I can go here, -5. I can go here and just keep going, -5. Okay, so it looks like we've been having some issues with this one. See, this one's coming up. So we've been having some issues here. How do I pause this thing? So then here we're gonna just keep checking grades, -5, -5, and coming up 3.12. I would be tempted to probably lower, no, there it goes, I'm sorry, -3.1. This one is too steep. Here I think I would go negative. I'd be tempted to stay away from -5, because if I go -5, -5, this might be too steep. But let me go -4 here. And then this -2.6, -3, perfect. That works nicely. Okay. And I also kind of looking at the elevations too. That's 34, that's 31, that's 3 feet. That's quite a bit, but -5, so well, that works. So I'll let you figure out the rest of it. I'll let you do the islands also. I would recommend adding feature lines across here to check these. Now, I've had some questions also that, this grade here, I ended up with a -1 along here, and this one a -0.93. So does this have to be -1? Not necessarily. I have some students where these grades are 0 or like a 0.1. It doesn't matter as long as then it has a negative 0.6 across or just away. In other words, if this is 0, this could potentially be 0 also, but then you need some feature lines across here to make sure it's flowing away, because it is flowing down in this direction, -0.6. If this you had put it at -0.6, that could work too. But once again, these elevations, geometrically speaking, these would have been the same, but then we need to make sure we have flow across or away from this area. So, but if you have feature lines coming this way and they're also 0, then we got a problem. We got a big ponding area right in here. So there's just so many different ways. Honestly, in this case, I would make sure for this one side in particular, I would make sure to give it a little bit of grade this way, just to keep lowering these elevations, 35 here, and then 33 here. Because if you leave these flat here and here, you'll end up with a grade of 36 over here. You'll end up with an elevation here of about 36 also. And we're kind of filling in this site a lot to begin with. We're at 33. If you're at 36, it could potentially work, but we're trying to lower this site as much as possible. Okay, so just keep those in mind. The next video, I'll show you how to do sidewalks and buildings.